Hello and welcome. In this episode, I'm going to focus on lesser known cryptids, featuring devil monkeys and the Hat Man. These stories include one from a young girl and her family who saw strange monkey like creatures in their house at night, a young man who has episodes of sleep paralysis that include appearances from the Hat Man, and a woman who has had a mysterious figure following her wherever she's gone her entire life. But first, we start with two devil monkey encounters, one from 2006 and the other going all the way back to the late 1990s. Before we get started, I just want to say that a lot of people turn to posting their stories online because they feel like they can't tell anyone and would be seen as crazy if they did. Most people who experience these beings are traumatized and feel the need to unburden themselves, or just have someone who will believe them listen to their story. If you've had an encounter and you feel like you can't tell anyone for fear of being made fun of, ridiculed, called a liar, or any other reason, email me. You'll find a sympathetic ear here who will believe you. I do want to mention that just because you email me your story, it doesn't mean it will end up in an episode on my channel. Your story can stay between me and you if that's what you want. Also, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to come on an episode and tell your story, email me. My email is wolfwhocriedcryptid@gmail.com. Alright, let's get into today's stories. The first story of this episode is actually two reported encounters of monkey-looking creatures where they shouldn't exist that was shared by a user. They are not his personal experiences, but those he found on the internet. One comes from 2006 and the other comes from the late 1990s. The first encounter took place on January 12, 2006. A man returned home to a scene that defied logic. His 6-year-old Labrador was face to face with a being that seemed to combine the traits of a monkey, a canine, and the devil. Without warning, the entity sprang up onto its hind legs, bolting toward the doorway with such urgency that it nearly knocked the witness aside. Its features were grotesque. It had elongated fangs, a tail reminiscent of a monkey's, and eyes that radiated an unnatural glow. The second incident goes back to the late 1990s, and it unfolded on a desolate stretch of road near Roanoke, Virginia. At around 2:30 a.m., an Ohio woman, rerouted due to construction, found herself driving past a sign labeled Red Wolf Crossing. Moments later, a creature unlike anything she had ever seen jumped in front of her car. It was covered entirely by black fur that was short and glossy. Its ears were sharply pointed, and it had a long tail. Though it appeared feline in some aspects, it didn't match anything she had ever seen before. She described its snout as flatter than a dog's, more akin to a cat's, and standing upright, it towered at 6 feet tall. Its torso resembled that of a giant human, while its head resembled that of a large monkey adorned with a pointed beard. Its hind legs, however, were unmistakably animalistic, like those of a cat or a dog, she says. And according to the witness, the creature was muscular and thin. Seeking answers, she contacted the U.S. Game and Wildlife Department. They dismissed the sighting as a probable encounter with a feral dog or a wolf-dog hybrid, but the woman was adamant what she saw was neither. She believed the creature had been crouched on all fours before launching itself across the road in a single astonishing leap, clearing both lanes in one bound, a length exceeding 18 feet or 6 meters. Such a jump was beyond the capability of known canines and even deer, which typically require multiple strides to cross the highway. With the first encounter, I'm wondering what all of you are probably wondering. What happened to the dog? I'm guessing it was alright, or the story probably would have mentioned it. Either way, I'd still like to know. But I couldn't imagine coming home to something like that. I'm just glad that this thing ran away and nothing else came of it. With the second encounter and her talking about how far this thing jumped, cryptids are said to be able to do that, but monkeys can jump pretty far too. The account said it was similar to the Dover Demon, but the Dover Demon isn't said to have fur, a tail, or a pointed beard. Not to mention that this takes place in Virginia. And from the description it sounds very much like a monkey, which are not native to Virginia. Another interesting thing about this one is that it takes place in the late 90s. The cryptid phenomenon is often thought of as more of a current thing, but I believe that's only because the internet has given so many people the opportunity to share their stories with pretty much anyone in the world who comes across them. But encounters have been going on for thousands of years. There are even accounts of genetic alterations by fallen angels to create beings that sound a lot like cryptids, and they are described in the Book of Enoch. Not to mention the Nephilim in the Bible, which is what I believe Sasquatches are descendants of. Then you have the hieroglyphics from ancient Egypt depicting Anubis, who looks a lot like a dogman. I also believe that there are no werewolves, only dogmen. But that's just my 2 cents. I say all of this because even an encounter from the 90s doesn't surprise me in the slightest. What do you think about these encounters? What would you do if you got home and found a devil monkey facing off with your dog, or you saw one jumping across the road in front of your car? The next story comes from a user who shares her friend's story about how she and her siblings used to see monkey like creatures in their house at night. The original poster was working with her friend, and it was just the two of them in the building. At one point, she turned to her friend and asked if she believed in the paranormal. Without hesitation, her friend said yes, and then went on to say she'd grown up in a haunted house. Intrigued, the original poster pressed for more details. Her friend explained that she and her sister had shared a bedroom growing up, with her sleeping on the top bunk. During the night, they would witness bizarre monkey-like creatures emerging from the closet and wandering around their room. These beings were tall enough that, when standing upright, their glowing eyes aligned perfectly with the edge of the top bunk. Sometimes she'd even wake up to find one silently watching her from the foot of her bed. Trying to make sense of it, the original poster asked if the creatures resemble something like a Sasquatch. Her friend nodded slowly. It wasn't just her imagination either, as her brother and sister had seen them too. And they didn't stay confined to the bedroom. These things would occasionally show up in other parts of the house as well. The original poster had no reason to doubt her friend's story. She said they had a good relationship, and this didn't feel like a prank or a tall tale. The story really stuck with her because she had never heard of anything like that happening before. I've heard plenty of stories where cryptids come into someone's home, and even those with figures standing and watching people sleep, as we'll get to in the next 2 stories. But to wake up to find glowing eyes at the end of your bed would make it so much worse. And not to mention something that looks like a giant monkey, standing at about 6 feet tall by my estimation, given that she said it could look over the edge of the top bunk. I'd be interested to know if there was a crawl space or attic access in the closet, some way for them to get inside. And not to mention elsewhere in the house also, since they were seen in other places too. That brings me to my next point, and it being that she wasn't the only one to see these beings. All of her siblings saw them as well, backing up her story. I can't even begin to guess what these things were doing there, but I'm glad they didn't mess with anyone while they were roaming around the house. This story could have taken a dark turn, but fortunately it didn't. What do you think about this one? What would you do if you saw creatures like that coming out of your closet in the middle of the night? The next story comes from a poster who had regular episodes of sleep paralysis accompanied by appearances of the Hat Man. The original poster started by wondering how many others have encountered the entity known as the Hat Man, a looming silhouette wearing a trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat, usually hidden in shadow, normally arriving when you're sleeping. But for him, the encounters have been disturbingly vivid, and as I already mentioned, they coincide with episodes of sleep paralysis. Two of these encounters have stuck with him. The first, as he mentioned, it was during an episode of sleep paralysis when he was unable to move while the Hat Man stood silently at the foot of his bed. Desperate to break free, he summoned every ounce of strength to kick his leg. As soon as his foot moved, the figure vanished and he could move freely. The second encounter, he says, was far more terrifying. He woke up one night to find the Hat Man looming directly over him, staring at him with eyes that weren't eyes at all. They appeared almost like blinding white lights. The figure leaned closer then, as if studying him. Then it reached out and grabbed him. He woke up in a frenzy, heart pounding, and for weeks afterward, he was afraid to fall asleep, especially if the lights were off. Ever since then, he avoids sleeping on his back so he doesn't encounter the Hat Man or any other shadowy figures that may be lingering, watching him sleep. The only thing worse than waking up in the middle of the night to find someone or something standing in your room watching you sleep would be the inability to move. I've never experienced sleep paralysis myself, but I've talked to others who have, and from what I hear, it is quite terrifying. It isn't something I would wish on anyone. This isn't the first story I've heard where the Hat Man is seen during sleep paralysis either. I've heard other stories where the people who encounter him don't experience it, but there are a lot who do. The way he just stands there watching really makes me wonder what his intentions truly are. I fully believe these entities are malevolent and possibly even demonic, so whatever they're doing stalking people like that can't be good. Luckily, I've never heard of anyone being harmed by the Hat Man. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, I'm just saying that they mostly seem to like to watch us for whatever creepy reason. What do you think about this one? And what would you do if you woke up, couldn't move, and found an entity like that staring at you? The final story of this episode comes to us from a user who has had a strange, mysterious figure following her throughout her entire life, no matter where she has gone. For as long as the original poster can remember, a tall and possibly thin, shadowy figure wearing a top hat has been a part of her life. He's appeared in her home, at her school, and even when she was at other people's homes, always silent and always watching. She's seen him peeking from behind trees in broad daylight, slipping around corners of buildings, and even standing just outside the stall door while she was using the bathroom at school. She describes him as being dark, featureless, and like a silhouette of a man cut from black paper. Most often she would see him indoors. He would sometimes linger behind her bedroom door or pace the hallway at night. There were even times when she would catch glimpses of him in the mirror, just a flicker of movement behind her, a presence trailing her reflection. But when she turned around, he wasn't there. These sightings don't happen on a daily basis, but they happen often enough that she's ruled out having something in her eye or just catching a glimpse of something normal in her peripheral vision and mistaking it for the Hat Man. And strangely enough, she's never felt afraid of this being. His presence is not threatening, just a quiet, persistent curiosity. She's read accounts of others who have encountered the Hat Man, many describing overwhelming dread or even sleep paralysis. But that's never been her experience. Even as a child, she has felt no threat from this thing, only a sense of being observed. He's followed her through multiple moves into new homes, and now as an adult she still sees him from time to time, though no one else in her family has ever witnessed him. She's compiled a list of some of the more notable encounters that she remembers. The first that she shares is from when she was a toddler. She remembers him standing behind her bedroom door at night. Sometimes he would even drift down the hallway and vanish. Other times she'd fall asleep with him still watching. Outside she saw him often. Once, while she was playing fetch with her dog, she noticed him standing at the edge of the woods. Another time, when she was about 5 or 6 years old, while in her wading pool with her friend, she saw his upper body peering around the side of the house, watching her. While in elementary school, he would appear during recess, just his torso visible behind a tree, watching her while she was on the swings. Twice she saw his feet beneath the stall door in the restroom, though no one else was in there when she opened it, and she never heard anyone coming in. Another time she passed the gym at school and saw him standing alone in the center of the empty room. At her friend's house, he stood in the doorway as they played with dolls. At her grandmother's, he waited at the end of the hallway. He shone up in mirrors, in her bedroom doorway while she was laying down reading, and even in her daughter's room across the hall as she exits her own. One moment stands out vividly to her, and that's when she believes her daughter saw him too. The original poster was giving her daughter a bath and turned to grab the shampoo. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. When she turned fully, he backed out of the room slowly. He was completely silent, as if he was gliding away rather than walking. Her daughter's eyes followed him, though she was too young to speak. She says there are many more instances where she has seen this figure. He's never spoken, never touched her, never tried to interact. And she mentions again that this is not sleep paralysis. She was fully awake each time she saw him, often interacting with others or mid-activity when he appeared. I'm not sure there's anything much creepier than having a silent stalker follow you your whole life. Fortunately for her, just like in the last story, this being hasn't tried anything. It just watches. Still though, this creature has attached itself to her, being that it's followed her throughout her entire life and to different locations. Even though these entities seem content with just watching people, I still don't get a good vibe from them. I know some people don't feel afraid, but it just doesn't sit right with me. Honestly, even though this thing doesn't seem malevolent to her and she isn't afraid of it, I will still take steps to get rid of it. There are a lot of beliefs on how to do that, but the one surefire way I know for a fact works, because I've done it myself to rid my home of a demonic presence, is to call upon the name of Jesus Christ using the power of the Holy Spirit. Even though this thing seems content with just watching her and now her family, I still wouldn't trust it, and I would definitely take steps to get rid of it. This story also makes me think of the true intentions of the Hat Man. This thing has been following her her entire life, seemingly just to watch. It's really baffling to me. I don't have a guess as to what they're really up to, but I definitely don't think it's just because they're curious. What do you think about this one? And what do you think the Hat Man's true intentions are? Just to watch us, or is it something more nefarious? And that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you'd like to hear more stories like these and other types of cryptids, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to send me your story, I'd love to read it. My email is wolfwhocriedcryptid@gmail.com. I will also put my email in the description below. With your permission, I may want to use your story in an episode. Even if you'd prefer I didn't share your story on my channel and just want someone to listen, email me. We can privately talk about your encounter. Also, if you'd like to come on an episode and tell your own story, email me. Please remember to keep it civil in the comments section. No one deserves to be ridiculed whether they believe or not. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you at the next episode.